What's up, everybody? Welcome to Southern Life. On today's video, we're in the KY Jelly State. That's right, Kentucky, the 502, the LOU. Shout out to everybody in Kentucky. But today we're going to be talking mostly about the eastern part of Kentucky and the larger cities as well. Kentucky is a state that has one of the highest overdose rates in the country. Interestingly, many of the people that live in Kentucky seem to be completely unaware of how bad things are in their state. Now, to give you guys a perspective, we're going to first look at analytics from San Francisco, a city that has a horrendous overdose death rate, so we have something to compare it to. The overdose death rate in San Francisco is just under 100 per 100,000 for the total population, which is absolutely insane. Even scarier is that for African Americans, it's 6 times higher than that. At 600 per 100,000, this has got to be one of the most disturbing analytics that I've ever heard. So much for equality there. So that has to be one of the most disparaging analytics you'll see anywhere for any large city for overdoses. I think only Philadelphia comes even close to that at around 70 per 100,000. So that is as bad as things can get. Here in the state of Florida, where I currently live, the absolute worst county is Citrus at 64 per 100,000. And I would say that overall things in Florida are bad when it comes to overdoses. If we were comparing it by states, for example, the state of California's overdose death rate, 26 per 100,000. That's how many people are overdosing in California. Now, in the state of Kentucky as a whole, you're more than 2 times as likely to overdose than in California. So for the people in Kentucky that think that things are bad in California, analytically, things are actually 2 times worse in Kentucky than California. By rate, of course, the city of San Francisco is a bad example. Now, hopping back to eastern Kentucky, I had a person in a video from Bell County said, "What does this man get these analytics from? He must have beef with our town. I've lived here forever. I've never met a meth head or a crackhead at most." In other words, this person is completely just unaware of how bad things are in Kentucky. I made a video talking about how Eastern Kentucky has one of the highest drug overdose death rates in the country. And I was just, driving through a town, and I mentioned this area of Kentucky has the worst analytics. And the people there, for some reason or another, like you can read from this comment, as far as they're concerned, they're completely unaware of how bad things are in Kentucky. So now that we've explained to you how bad it's gotten in some parts of Florida, how bad it's gotten in some parts of California, this is Kentucky. Let's talk numbers from Kentucky. And these are numbers from 2023. We still haven't got numbers from 2024. But in 2023, the number one county in Kentucky had an overdose death rate of 187 per 100,000. That is almost twice as bad as the city of San Francisco. And where is Estill County, Eastern Kentucky? Well, that's a little town up in the mountains. It's really a rural area of Kentucky. We're talking rural, isolated counties in Appalachia of Eastern Kentucky that have an overdose death rate nearly 2 times higher than the city of San Francisco. Now, keep in mind, the state of California, their overdose death rate was only 26 per 100,000. So you could say that it's almost 7 times more likely for somebody in this county in Kentucky to overdose than somebody in California in general. So that just gives you an idea how bad things really are in eastern Kentucky. The second highest in Kentucky is Lee County with a rate of 155 per 100,000. That is significantly higher than the city of San Francisco. So just so that we're clear, the overdose death rate in Kentucky's rural Appalachian counties are higher than cities like San Francisco, higher than cities like Philadelphia that are known to be the worst in the country. The only difference is nobody goes to eastern Kentucky to know what's going on in these mountains. And it's crazy to think how people that live here seem completely unaware of how things are realistically in Kentucky. As far as they're concerned, they have no idea this is happening. Could they really be that stupid, that blind, or are they aware of the problem and trying to deceive us? It seems like for the vast majority of my Kentucky videos, people just act like they're completely unaware. Like, where did this guy get this information from? Well, I don't know, maybe from the state of Kentucky's own records. Now, if you think the numbers themselves are bad, wait till you see the actual composition from the medical examiners of the substances that they're finding in people in Kentucky. Because they're not just finding the same old fentanyl that they're finding everywhere else in the United States. In Kentucky, they're finding the precursors to fentanyl, which lets you know that fentanyl in eastern Kentucky isn't coming from somewhere else. It's being produced. Yes, because people in Kentucky are not just dying from fentanyl itself, they're actually finding people who have the precursors. Now, if you don't know what the word precursor means, it means before you create the substance. Yes, these are the actual substances before the fentanyl, which lets you know that the fentanyl is coming from right here in the United States. Now, if you've been watching my YouTube channel, that may not be a surprise to you because you may remember that I recently talked to some police officers in Pinellas County, Florida, and they're telling me that they don't think it's coming from Mexico. They believe that it's being produced here because they're the ones that are doing all of the actual, substance examination, and they're finding that the precursors are already here in the United States. So if the precursors are here, why would they have to import it mixed somewhere else? That's something my subscribers would know, but somebody who's watching my video for the first time will find that as a surprise. And if that sounds like a surprise to you, it's because we don't watch Fox News or CNN, we study analytics. And this is why people in Bell County, Kentucky make ignorant comments like this, because they're watching Fox News all day and Fox News is telling them that drugs are out of control in California, but he's not aware that the overdose death rate in Bell County where he lives is almost 2 times higher than the state of California. It's hard to believe that in the year 2025, where all you need is a phone or a computer at your disposal to have any piece of information that you want on earth, people are still being lied to about things that all it would take is asking your phone to give you the answer. Hey Siri, what is the drug overdose death rate in Kentucky and California? Oh, will you just look at the answer? But of course, there are 2 large cities in Kentucky. This is Lexington, and the other large city in Kentucky is Louisville, and the situation in Louisville is fairly bad. Over the last few years, 500 people every single year are dying in Jefferson County, which is the city of Louisville. That brings their rate to 66 per 100,000. But what's crazy is it's 3 times higher than that in eastern Kentucky in the rural counties. So just so you understand, the overdose death rate in Louisville, Kentucky is higher than Citrus County, Florida. That's 67 counties in Florida, right? Citrus is the highest at 64. Well, it's even higher than that in Louisville, with a total number of 500 people lost every single year. That's what Louisville's been averaging, a rate of 66 per 100,000, which is only 1/3 of the rate of eastern Kentucky. So that should just give you an idea of how bad things are in eastern Kentucky, when even a large rundown city like Louisville is among 1/3 of the fraction of the rural counties in the state. So yeah, things in eastern Kentucky are pretty freaking bad. And it's hard to believe that people that live there are just completely unaware of how bad things are. Could they really be that stupid? It's hard to understand how somebody could live in a place that is so messed up and yet think it's absolutely normal. Now, just so you understand, Tampa, Florida is around 34 per 100,000. So Louisville is about 2 times higher than Tampa and about 5 times higher than Miami. And that is only 1/3 of how bad it is in eastern Kentucky. So when we compare all these different cities, and here's the other thing, San Francisco is under 100, Louisville is close to 70, so 7 to 10 ratio roughly, right? That means that Louisville, Kentucky situation, it's just a little bit better than San Francisco, not by much. So where people are being fooled, the reality versus what they're being told in front of their TV stations, I don't know how people can be so fooled to be oblivious to the reality. And it's crazy to think that the situation in Kentucky's largest city, Louisville, is only a little different than Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia was 70 per 100,000, and that's pretty bad for a big city. So Louisville has got as bad as Philadelphia with overdoses, and I'm sure you guys have all seen the videos of Kensington in Philadelphia, known as the most rundown, drugged out place in America. So to think that Louisville's overdose death rate is just somewhat comparable to the situation in Philadelphia, that should just give you an idea how bad things are in Kentucky's urban areas as well. Now, Kentucky's western part is actually doing very good. It isn't every county in Kentucky, so let's be clear about that. There are some rural counties in western Kentucky that are faring very well. It's the eastern part of the state in Appalachia that has the worst problem. But it's interesting to see when I go to these parts of Kentucky and make videos about the situation there, how the people there, it's like a surprise to them. How are you not aware of how bad things are in your community? Simply put, stop believing everything you hear on Fox News. Grab your guns, take them to the pawn shop and sell them, and use that money to go on vacation across America and see the whole country and have a better understanding of the world. And instead of hoarding guns, maybe take a few pictures and travel across America so you can have a realistic understanding of what's going on in the world. And this isn't a red or blue thing. Kentucky's a red state, it's got a huge problem. San Francisco's a very blue city and it's got a huge problem. Has nothing to do with politics. People want to make it about politics because they want to deceive the masses. But if you educate yourself, what I tell rural people in America who've never left their small towns is sell your guns, take them to the pawn shop, and whatever that money is, use that money to travel. Because the guns are going to do nothing for you. What's really going to teach you how to protect yourself is to go out there and see the world, go to San Francisco, go to New York, go on a road trip across America, see what this country is really about, with an open mind, by the way, because if you stay narrow-minded, it'll be useless. And don't tell me you went to San Francisco in 1972. It's not 1972, it's 2025 and things change rapidly. There was a lot of places that 5-10 years ago were great places to live and today have gone completely to crap. It's 2025, sell your guns and go on a road trip across America. Nearly 500 people in Louisville every single year and another 160 in Lexington. Do you know what 500 people looks like? Have you ever been to an event where there's 500 people? That's a lot of people. That's like literally half a school. That's how many people every single year are losing their lives in Kentucky's largest city. Are people not aware of how bad things are in Kentucky? Remember I mentioned earlier something about precursors, right? Let's take a look at that information. Before we leave Louisville, I want to say that this is the West End. It's predominantly the African-American part of Louisville. This is where I went to elementary school in Whitney Young Elementary School, a school that is about 96% African-American when I assisted to it. Louisville, Kentucky has a desegregation rule where if you live in a white area, they transfer you to a black area. Not everybody, but some students. And I was one of those very privileged students that got to go to a mostly African-American school. And it was one of the most incredible and beautiful experiences of my lifetime. And despite the fact that the school was predominantly African-American, they treated me like their brothers. And I can always say that when I look back on the years that I went to Whitney Young Elementary School with my African-American brothers, they were some of the most beautiful years of my life. And the experience of being able to go to a predominantly African-American school when I didn't live in the West End was incredible and, well, good memories. So if you ever went to Whitney Young Elementary School, shout outs to you. Not many people in the United States will have the experience of being able to go to a predominantly African-American school when they're not African-American. And I believe that that experience shaped me for the rest of my life. So I know that the desegregation rules in Louisville get a lot of drama, and there's great things about it and horrible things about it. One of the most horrible things about it is how long my commute to school took. I actually had to get on 2 different buses to go to school in West Louisville. That didn't make a lot of sense. Now, my bus routes in South Louisville and my bus stop in South Louisville were a different story. That was absolutely scary and dangerous. Believe it or not, South Louisville was actually more dangerous than West End to me, at least as a student, having to fight all the time on the bus and at the bus stops. But I never had a single fight in school. One time, the baddest kid in school, Kenneth Osborne, wanted to fight me, and I ran away. We later became best friends because his dad and my dad worked at Kentucky Transfer Line, a defunct company that used to sit in front of the Clarksdale projects. And because our parents worked together and I was a bad kid and he was a bad kid, my dad and his dad would alternate picking us up from school whenever we got kicked out. Because in Kentucky, if you act out, your parents have to come pick you up. And well, of course, it was either me and Kenny were sometimes getting picked up on the same day, being taken to the same company where our parents worked. So me and Kenny actually became really good friends. I've never heard about Kenneth Osborne anymore, but he was one of my best friends growing up. And me and him were the two baddest kids in Whitney Young Elementary School. Interestingly, the poorest neighborhood in Louisville is actually a neighborhood called Portland, just to the north of the West End. This is predominantly an Irish neighborhood. There was one Irish kid in our school, and he got treated very badly by the other kids. It really must have sucked to be him. So racism can obviously work both ways. So of course, me being Hispanic wasn't really a problem in the West End of Louisville, but this kid being Irish was possibly the worst thing that you could have been if you went to Whitney Young Elementary School. Interestingly, there were plenty of white girls and they were treated just fine. But the precursors. Now, precursors are highlighted here, and this is the number of people that died in Kentucky that had precursors in their system, and it breaks it down even further by type of precursor. You can see that throughout most of the deaths of people overdosing in Kentucky, a lot of them had the precursors to fentanyl in their system. That's highlighted in yellow. It's the numbers with the letters. And this is something that even medical examiners sometimes don't understand. They're able to read the results, but they really don't know what these substances actually are. In other words, a lot of medical examiners, at least here in the state of Florida, don't get enough information about this. I'm not sure if the state of Kentucky is educated better on this stuff or not. They might be, they might not. But really, the interesting aspect is that when you look at the substances in the Kentucky Medical Examiner's reports for the end of the year, is that you're seeing precursors in people who are dying. That means that the fentanyl is an after effect, an after mix, not a precursor. That tells you that possibly in Kentucky, fentanyl is being made. Because you're not just finding fentanyl, you're finding the precursors to fentanyl. How it's getting there, who the crap knows. But it is interesting that you don't find the precursors here in Florida to the same percentages. In fact, not even significantly enough to be mentioned by the medical examiner's office. So what that tells us is that here in the hills of Kentucky, people that are overdosing from drugs, many times in their system have the precursors of fentanyl. That is interesting to think that perhaps in Kentucky, fentanyl is being manufactured, not in Mexico like we're being told. Just throwing that out there, because if you have an explanation why the precursors to fentanyl would be in the system of people in Kentucky but not fentanyl itself, I'd love to hear it. Yeah, go ahead. If you have a better explanation, please hit the comments and explain it to me. Because as far as I'm concerned, a precursor is before, not after. I'd love to hear your opinion on that. Now back to Louisville for a minute. Louisville, Kentucky's airport is one of the largest cargo airports in the entire world. Yes, located in the heart of South Louisville is the Louisville Airport. And while it isn't a large passenger airport, it is one of the top 10 largest cargo airports in the world. So Louisville has a lot of international freight cargo moving from one point to the next, and it's also somewhat of a railroad hub, and it's possible that perhaps that is why in Kentucky, despite the fact it's in the heart of the country, could easily have access to international shipping. So it's not exactly a port city like Philly or Baltimore or San Francisco, but it does have a lot of great infrastructure. Louisville, Kentucky is situated kind of in the heart of the United States population center with interstates in all directions. It is a highway and railroad hub and a cargo airport hub. That makes Louisville, Kentucky kind of a very important place for transportation. So it wouldn't be out of the question that precursors could find their way into Kentucky and flood these counties on the eastern part of the state. But like the way Dave Chappelle said in the movie Half Baked, that's just my own personal opinion. Now, Eastern Kentucky, we know Appalachia, a large Irish and Scottish, ancestry there, has always had problems from before. It's just kind of a problem that this community faces. But despite the fact that they're almost inherently predisposed to these types of problems because of their ancestry and the practices, it's not a secret why Scottish and Irish people settled the mountains of Eastern Kentucky, because they were almost not wanted in the New England area. Without getting deeper into history and ruffling people's feathers, when did things get bad in Kentucky? Well, the change for the worse happened between 2016 and 2017. And again, we don't want to ruffle people's feathers, but that's when things in Kentucky really took a nosedive. Now, this area, like I said, has historically always been predisposed to one type of addiction or another. But in 2017 is when things just absolutely dived out of control in Eastern Kentucky. And unfortunately, I do believe that this problem heading into 2025 will not get any better. Things here are going to continue to spiral out of control. Could something change for the better? I hope so. I really do. But the reality is that in 2017 is when these overdose rates just seemed to spike out of control. And over the last few years, things have kind of leveled off. Moving forward from 2025 onward, I believe it's actually going to get worse. But there's no real telling. Only year after year we can see the analytics. I really hope things get better for Eastern Kentucky. But unfortunately, this is a plague that seems to have no end. Thinking about a city like Louisville, 500 people. I mean, it's said that in some of these counties, in some places in the United States right now, this was just recently said by Ashley Moody. She is the general attorney in the state of Florida. She recently did a press conference with the governor of Florida, and she said that in some places in the United States right now, there are actually more people dying from overdoses than there are being born. In fact, for people of middle age in the United States, Ashley Moody said in her conference, which I haven't confirmed this analytic, so we're just going to have to verify it later. But Ashley Moody in her press conference said that the leading cause of death right now in the United States for people of middle age is overdoses. However, what's really sad is that she's sitting in this interview next to the same people that are telling people the misinformation that we just reviewed, how things are worse in California. So sadly, despite the fact that they acknowledge that this is what's hurting more people than anything else in America, they don't want to address the real facts that things in places like rural counties in Kentucky are worse than large cities like San Francisco. Now, I have heard all these officials in Florida trash talk San Francisco endlessly. Never really heard them say a single word about Eastern Kentucky. So it's a very interesting thing how, despite recognizing what the problem is and how bad it's got, they're also kind of in cahoots with the same people that are misleading people about the information. You can look up the numbers, you can see the information, you can see that, yeah, San Francisco's got a horrible situation, but it's nothing compared to what's happening in Eastern Kentucky. Now, if you keep reading about these reports from the state of Kentucky, they talk about how 750,000 people in Kentucky have had treatment of some sort for addiction, which is absolutely insane, and how the state has spent $131 million in some type of assistance for people in recovery. Now, the state of Kentucky does better than other states at helping their people have access to the things they need, from what I've heard. I've interviewed a lot of homeless people on the streets of Kentucky, like I have in many other states. And what I hear from the people in Kentucky is that the state of Kentucky offers a lot of help, much more than other states. And at least the state of Kentucky is trying to help their people. But, of course, it isn't enough. In other words, cities like Louisville and Lexington are offering people resources. And their overdose rates, despite the resources, are still unacceptably high. When you look at the eastern part of the state, what is going on in those mountains and why have things got so bad there? You know, a lot of people there own their properties. They don't have ridiculous taxes. Most people don't even have to worry about the cost of rent because people there own a lot of land. Sure, the economy is bad in the eastern Kentucky mountains, but nobody there has a mortgage or an expensive car payment, so is it just the lack of occupation? Sometimes I feel like the more demanding a state is, the higher the rent crisis is, the more expensive it is to make a living, the harder people have to work just to survive. Could it be that life in Eastern Kentucky is so easygoing that people have too much time on their hands? A lot of times when people have too much time on their hands, they preoccupy themselves because they're not worried about chasing life. There's just a lot of free time. Now, I know that life in Kentucky is very affordable compared to other states. In fact, Louisville right now is among the top 10 cheapest, most affordable cities in the United States. But it's interesting that despite the fact life in Kentucky is so affordable, it really hasn't led to a higher standard of living for the people there. In fact, there's actually a correlation between cities that are affordable and high overdose death rates, as well as high murder rates and all that. So it's just because a place is affordable doesn't exactly make it better. In fact, just like buying a vehicle, if you buy the most affordable vehicle on the lot, it's going to have a lot more problems than the brand new one. The brand new one might be extraordinarily expensive, but it comes with a warranty period. There's no warranty period in Kentucky. When it comes to cities, it's like buying a car. The more affordable it is, the more likely it's going to break down. But if you get something brand new with a warranty, sure, the price tag will be ridiculous, but you know that the quality is guaranteed. And I believe that many times people are mistaken by the idea that somewhere is better because it's more affordable. It's just like buying a car. Why would the cheaper car be better than the more expensive one? When it comes to places to live, the same thing is true. Just because a place is affordable doesn't exactly make it better. And many times people just don't want to work harder. So states like Kentucky are great places to be lazy and unproductive. Other states with higher rents and cost of living may offer a better quality of life, but you're not going to get away with that sleeping in and being lazy. These are more competitive places to live. This is beautiful Georgetown, Kentucky, right outside of Lexington. There's a lot of jobs here. The car industry, for example. I wish we had jobs like that here in Florida. The state of Kentucky actually has great assembly plants and great jobs that are great for people to make a decent living. Despite the fact Kentucky is a poor state, there are great industries in the state. There are a few smaller counties in Kentucky that had none. That's mostly in the western part of the state. So again, the problem centers itself mostly around Appalachia. Every year in the state of Kentucky, roughly about 2,000 people are losing their lives to their addiction. If you're among one of those people in Kentucky, please seek recovery. There are states like Florida where I live where these resources are harder to get. Take advantage of the fact that these resources are available. Seek help, recover, and enjoy life. Don't become another sad analytic. There are just too many beautiful things for you in store for your life. You're going to see your kids, you're going to see your grandkids, and maybe even your great-grandkids, and be able to leave behind a beautiful legacy. Despite the fact you may feel that people don't care about you because of the things you've experienced in your life, somebody out there will hurt dearly when they find out that you're no longer here. So if you're one of these people that is dealing with addiction, look for help, seek recovery, and continue to work to clean yourself from this addiction that will make you just another sad analytic. I have known many people that have died from overdoses, and I never expected it to happen. I didn't expect it to be that person. I didn't expect it to be that day. And well, sadly, we never knew this was going to happen. It makes you wonder, could I have said something different to that person the last time I seen them if I knew that this is how they were going to end up? While you believe it or not, it will hurt a lot of people to know. So please, there are people that care about you, and we want to see you be as successful as possible. And that means if you're dealing with addiction, seeking recovery.